a really way to supercharge your real estate investing business, because they're two sides of the same coin. Property can turn into paper, paper can turn into property. So knowing how to get cash out of however the deal shows up is the most powerful thing. And you and I talked about this a little earlier, that my real estate investing, some of my best acquisitions came because I know the principles of the note business. So you don't have to go out and, master just notes, and you can. But if you know the note business, it's going to make you a much better real estate investor.
Amazing. So Dawn, I really like to start off things with this situation. You suddenly lose everything. What would you do?
Wonder what I did to offend God or something. Yes. Well, starting over from scratch, everything
Today, you suddenly lose everything today. You know everything that you've done, and you don't have any connections, but you know that you previously had connections.
Yeah. Well, I would just step and repeat, because in the beginning, when I started this journey, after I quit my nursing job, by the time I knew what to do, I had none of my own money left. So I'm always doing the business with other people's money, just with what's in my head, and just being the puppet master, making things happen. So wouldn't be anything different than I did in 2008. Start from nothing.
So walk us through your first step.
Well, you have to find deal flow, right? You have to have some deals. You have to start, either that means you start connecting with people, you go to clubs, you start speaking, maybe you write something, you position yourself as somebody who knows something. You start talking about what you love. That extra passion really makes things kind of line up in a different way. If you don't really love what you're doing, it's a lot harder, for the upward trajectory. And so you just start talking about what you love to do, and pretty soon deals are coming to you. You connect with anyone in your world who has extra capital, more time than money, and you partner with them, and you make win-win-win deals all the way around.
Sounds good. Got it. So let's talk about a little bit more about the deal flow. So how can someone start getting deal flow?
Okay, are we talking about notes then? Because yeah, it's the same thing. Okay, everything you do to create deal flow in any business is what you do in the note business. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're always going to have to be talking to people. My chosen way to do it was to be more of an attractive phase. Like I'm educating, I'm teaching, I'm speaking at groups, I'm blogging, I'm writing, I wrote a book. I position myself as the expert, then deals come to me. Now, if I wanted to direct market, just like to real estate, I could do that too. You can pull lists of undercarry notes and do it that way. So anything you do for the real estate market to build that, or any other business, even if you're an insurance agent, anything, you're going to have to build your lists little by little, position yourself, network, just start talking about what you love, and things start lining up.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's say this person pulls a list, right? And finds these notes that potentially could be good deals. What happens next? How does someone do a good deal?
Okay, well, how do they do it if they're buying a piece of real estate?
Well, they make sure the deal is profitable, that there's value add, and that they have all the capital stack lined up, the money and all that.
Right. So it's pretty much the same thing. And you have to add in there that you have to know enough to talk intelligently to somebody, and so you have to educate yourself a little bit so that you know what you're looking at, and you can talk with some degree of be appropriate with that seller, whether you're selling talking to a property seller or a note seller. You've got to know what you're talking about a little bit, or you don't even know how to get them to the next step, right?
Yeah. Great. So let's say let's talk about the note business. Where can someone start learning about the note business?
Well, there's a lot of people out there selling education anywhere from $150 to $50,000, depending on where you want, where you feel like you want to start at. There's a ton of free material out on the internet. I've created years and years and years of free content on my site over at notequeen.com. The three conferences that I held at South Lake Tahoe before COVID, all those 3 years are hosted up there, and I had some of the best people. It was really great experiences. But a lot of times it comes down to just one-on-one, like where is somebody right now and where do they want to go? So that's why I offer a consulting service. So there's anything and everything. If you have no money and you have time, then you can learn everything you need to know for free. Just go through a ton of videos that are free online. If you have more money than time, then you invest in someone who can get you there quicker. So
Yeah, that's the answer for sure. I want to talk to the people who are considering the note business. You know about real estate. What are the benefits of the note business in comparison to single family residential investments from your point of view?
Pardon?
From your point of view.
Well, I like both of them, and I see the note business as a really way to supercharge your real estate investing business, because they're two sides of the same coin. Property can turn into paper, paper can turn into property. So knowing how to get cash out of however the deal shows up is the most powerful thing. And you and I talked about this a little earlier, that my real estate investing, some of my best acquisitions came because I know the principles of the note business. So you don't have to go out and, master just notes, and you can. But if you know the note business, it's going to make you a much better real estate investor. But one of the things people generally like about notes is that, of course, it's secured by real estate, right? So you have to know a reasonable amount about real estate, because any note that you have is secured by that same real estate. That's part of your due diligence. But most people, I would say it's a really common for like a little mom and pop couple to have a few rentals, build up a portfolio for you clear, but they get tired. They don't want to be landlords anymore. So they start papering out, and they carry paper on their real estate investment. There's an echo or something that's really...
Is it gone now?
I think it might be gone now. But anyway, getting back to, it's very common for people who have been real estate investors later in life to get tired of being a landlord and just want to collect the payments without tenants, toilets, taxes, trash, all of that. So it's much more of a mailbox money sort of thing than being a landlord, but it's secured by property that you already know and are comfortable with.
Got it. Perfect. So I want to highlight for the people listening, you shared with me that you bought the house that you live in, and that was a great deal that actually became a note deal as well. I think that story really shows the highlights of the note business. Could we talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I don't like doing super high volume. I'm a very boutique operator in my local market. Of course, my note portfolio is national, because you can go national with notes much more easily than property, in my opinion. But I like to have 2 deals out of one if I can. Or 3. I'd like to set up one deal and get paid multiple times. And I think everyone can agree with that. So as hard as you work and as much money as you spend getting leads for real estate, why not bake in another transaction, another way to get paid? So this is an example, not the only one, but a very good example of how powerful this can be. So 5 years ago, there's a lady that came to me through my not my No Queen site, my We Buy Carson Houses site, and I got in touch with her, and the property I'm now, she had a cash offer for 225, and she was trying to get more.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she wanted 420, but that wasn't happening. She had it listed for a year. But then when you have kind of meth head tenants, it's not so easy to sell a property. So, anyway, so I said, listen, Raul actually paid her plane ticket. She didn't have money to even fly down from Washington to meet me here in Nevada at this property and sell it to me. So I paid her plane ticket, just considered it, one of those risks of marketing and promotion. It might not happen. But anyway, I said, okay, Robin, here it is. You got a cash offer for 225. I'll give you 250 if you'll carry it for me with 15% down and the rest of it amortized over 30 years at 3.5%, which is astounding. That was better what the banks were giving at that time, and no underwriting, none of
No
that.
headaches.
Well, no headaches, but she was happy because she got a better price and she wanted the income for living on. And so it worked out great. But what I did, because I understand the other side of this, the no business, I baked in this little paragraph that said, I have the first right of refusal by the note at the same price offered by any other arm's length investor. Meaning, if she ever wanted to sell that note, I get the first chance to meet or beat that same number. So, but I knew that she didn't want to sell, and I suggested that she shouldn't sell because the terms she gave me helped her get her price, but it didn't preserve the present value of the note that well. So we understood that. And I said, it's better if you don't sell this note because it will take quite a discount. So she goes, that's fine. Well, a year later, so I got a good deal. Even 250 was a good deal on this house, but it made it a killer deal with those terms, right? All I had to do is put $35,000 down, and the payment was less than $1,000, I think. Anyway, a year later, she says, Dawn, I just found out I have brain cancer and I don't know how long I'm going to live. I want to sell the note and just cash out for my kids. And I go, oh. I said, well, why don't you go shop it around and then come back to me and, I'll meet or beat that offer. So basically I told her, all I can give you is 50 cents on the dollar. Maybe you can get more from someone else, So she didn't. So I think the best offer she got that was preliminary and no due diligence done was like 60 cents on the dollar. So if that was $100,000 note, basically someone would pay her 60,000 for it. And she said, but they said it would take 2 months before I can have money. And she says, I don't even know if I'm going to live that long. So she says, I'll take your 50 cents on the dollar offer. So basically I got to buy that note at half price. Basically, I didn't buy the note. I had a short payoff. And so my all in on that property changed from 250,000 to 150,000, just because I understood the market for notes and put one key paragraph in note documents.
Yeah.
I mean, that made me $100,000, one paragraph, because I knew the other side of the coin. You have both sides of it, right? And there's another deal that I did where I got paid 7 times, maybe 8 times on the same deal in different ways, just because to me, property and paper are just two sides of the same coin. And multiple times what a wholesale fee would have been. And I'm going to put that course together for you, that example in your library, and it's going to blow people's minds. Just the ways that you can profit from the deal if you just keep your foot in it. You keep your foot in it, and you create options for more transactions down the road. So, and now this property is worth probably north of $1 million, I would guess.
Yeah.
You know, just in the 5 years. Of course, I did put a couple $100,000 into it and going. You're never done. But just think about that.
Yeah.
How awesome that was.
That is awesome. And I want to give someone an explanation about how you value a note once it's already done, just so they understand what the process is if they were going to sell theirs or they were looking to buy someone else's.
Right. And to your point in the beginning, you're like, well, how do you find a note? And then what do you do with it? Well, okay, someone's got a note. You call, ring, ring. Yes, of course, you're not calling usually. But basically, let's say, well, yes, you've got $100,000 note. That was the face value of the note. And let's just pretend that's the UPB, unpaid principal balance. That's the current balance of the note, just because it's easy for numbers. A $100,000 note can be worth $100,000. Not always. Usually there's always a little bit of discount, right? Because if you get paid off the next month, you're out all the closing costs, the transactional fees. Mm-hmm. Or that note could be worth 50 cents, as in the example I gave you earlier. Or that note could be worth $0 because you put it together wrong. You just didn't, basically you didn't have the right underwriting. And that happens sometimes, sadly, because almost no one out there, unless they buy and sell notes for their own portfolio, not your lawyer, not your title company, not your accountant, not your realtor, nobody knows how to do it right unless they've done it. And they don't know the impacts for the secondary market. So what I've become is sort of a underwriter. You know, banks have underwriting departments. I'm the underwriter kind of person for a mom and pop who's doing 1, 2, 3, 4 deals, you know, where they don't know how to put it together to maximize the value. There's critical errors that you can make that will make the note worth nothing. But let's just pretend that this $100,000 note is secured by, meaning the collateral is something that's worth $200,000, a house that's worth $200,000. So it's well collateralized. Okay, we're going to end that. We're also going to pretend that the payer, the owner of the house who's paying on this note, we're going to pretend like they have a 720 credit score. Okay? Mm-hmm. So setting up the best case scenario here, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to pretend that they put 25% down, or let's say 20%. That's conventional, right?
Yeah.
20% down. So that's really strong. That's a strong down payment for a homeowner. And let's pretend that the interest rate on it was 7%. Mm-hmm. That's pretty strong for an owner carry, but back in the day when the bank paper is running at 3% and 4%, 7 would have seemed high. Right now, not so much, right?
Yeah.
But usually owner carries get out. Well, it's whatever you can make up and agree upon. But let's just pretend that it was a really strong market, like bank financing is 5 and this note was paying at 7%. Mm-hmm. Let's also pretend it's fully amortized over 15 years instead of 30. Mm-hmm. So, because I'm going to stop right this second and remind me to come back to this point because I'll forget. More money sooner is better. So if I have a note payment I'm receiving tomorrow, if I have $1,000 note payment that's coming to me tomorrow, I can buy $1,000 worth of stuff. But that same $1,000, 30 years from now, that last payment, by the time inflation, the way it's going, how much do you think $1,000 is going to buy me 30 years from now? Cup of coffee, maybe? I don't know. That's an exaggeration. But I'm saying the payments that are sooner to be received are worth a lot more, right? So if I'm buying a note that's amortized over 30 years, it's more of a discount than a 15-year fully amortized note. So we're going to pretend like it's a 15-year fully amortized note. We're also going to pretend that it's being serviced by a professional servicer with impounds for taxes and insurance, and that they have paid on time for over 12 months. Mm-hmm. Called seasoning, salt and pepper, seasoning.
Mm-hmm.
More months, every time a month goes by, that's another shake of the salt shaker. Okay, it's got seasoning. Now
Yeah.
that is a paper. Property's worth 200,000 in a good town, in a good city that has 50,000 people or more. It's not a little podunk 3,000 people. Okay,
Yeah.
it's got the location, it's got the credit score, the down payment, the history, all that. So that note, I would guess in today's market right now, you could find someone who would. So the face rate on the note we said was 7, right?
Yeah.
I'll bet you that we could find someone willing to buy that at an 8 to 9% yield to the investor. That means since what the investor needs, 8%, is only a teeny bit away from the face rate on the note,
Mm-hmm.
7, then that means it's only going to be a discount. So I would guess 90 cents on the dollar or maybe a little better. Okay. So typically, though, average, because not all those are a paper that we see with owner financing,
Mm-hmm.
I would say a really common thing is 60 to 80%. So that means a 20 to 40% discount on paper and a lot less if there's other strategic errors. There's other ways to pay more for a note if people are flexible, just like with property. You and I can pay more for a property if someone gives us a payment plan over time. It's the same thing if there's someone you know. There's a lot of ways that you can get the seller what they need, and you still get the price that you need to. So everything works. So that answered the question, or did I really go off on a tangent? I'm not sure.
That answered the question for sure. And for the person who's buying a note, they're in it for the long term. They actually want to actualize all the payments that the note is going to bring, and that's where they're going to make their money.
Yes, and you want to make sure when you're buying a note that you're happy if it pays and you're happy if it doesn't pay and you're happy if you get paid off. So you have to make sure that you're happy,
Yeah.
regardless of how it goes.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to learn to be your own underwriter. And when you're putting your own deals together, if you have real estate that you're selling and you're going to offer owner financing to a tenant, let's say, you got to know what you're doing, or you and your heirs and beneficiaries are going to be potentially looking at a really steep discount, when they go to sell the note.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, for the person who's marketing for notes, they pull lists. Where can you pull a list?
Well, title companies can do it because when a transaction is recorded, we always see who the lender was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time it's a bank, it's an institution of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can pull lists on seller carryback where the beneficiary of the deed of trust
Mm-hmm.
is the seller.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have those lists pulled and then you can market to them. Sometimes, it's every business, it's a lot about relationships. So a lot of people that don't want to just spend tons of money on sending postcards and knowing that the big institutions are doing the exact same thing, and then they can offer, they're slick the way they're set up. It's really tough for a brand new person to send out a postcard list, even for a year, the same list. It's tough for that person to convert if they don't have relationships built in the industry, meaning you're working with a master broker, you're working with the institutions. A lot of times a good way to do it, which is for years, I trotted around to a lot of conventions and no conferences to make those connections where people who have deal flow. Like if you want to buy notes, connect people who have deal flow already. There's just the way there's mortgage brokers for private loans, there's note brokers for owner carry paper. So you got to connect with the people who have the deal flow. There's a lot of rabbit holes of different ways people do that, but in the very simplest form, there's people who get a lot of deal flow because they are masters at SEO and they've got big teams of people. Um, and if you have your own money to deploy, it's much better. I mean, you will do a lot better with a direct marketing campaign, as you know, you're the end buyer. But if you are just trying to be a broker and make a fee, that's a much tougher thing to really put together. But if you are the buyer, you and your friends, or you have a small fund, whatever, friends and family program,
Mhm.
then it does make sense. You can say, no, I'm not trying to compete with Amerifunds or Merit Exchange or, uh, financial, oh gosh, I'm forgetting their names. None of the biggest note buyers out there.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's some big institutions that are buying most of the institutional paper. And then you've got little hedge funds, private family funds that have $1 to $5 million that they deploy. So, but you have to connect with people. Just like
Mhm.
in business, you got to make connections. It's about relationships.
Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah, that gives a really good understanding of how to start. Now I really want to touch on your origin story. Like, did you what? How did you accidentally or purposefully get into notes?
That, that's a good question. I out of school, I graduated as with a bachelor's in science in nursing. So I was a nurse, an ICU and ER
Mhm.
nurse, and I had 4 little kids. And I loved my nursing job in a lot of ways, and I always thought in the back of my mind, way too busy to think about it most of the time, between just raising all the kids and things. But I said, there's got to be a way, as I'm getting paid well, and I don't want to trade my time for dollars. I think I should be able to figure this out. I'm
Mhm.
smart enough. I should be able to figure this out. So I started going to Weekend Warrior. This was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. I went to all these conferences about different ways that you could make money. And the no business just captivated me. I'm kind of like I got geeked out on the financial calculator, even though I'm not the most proficient of knowing how to do everything on that, but knowing how to use 5 buttons on that financial calculator gave me the sense that I could fly to the moon. Like I just felt like sometimes I'd wake up in the night and I didn't want to wake anyone else up, but I'd get under the covers and I'd be running my things to figure out how could I put this deal together to make it work for everybody. I just got geeked out on the whole thing. It's that nerd side of me. Same way right now is I just in the last 6 months learned Morse code and I love Morse code. Yeah, it's this geeky little thing that it just captivated me, and I just got on fire about it. And I go, people don't know the possibility of this. So, people who don't want to sell for cash because of capital gains, they need the income for retirement, they want to leave something good for their kids. They don't know how powerful this is because no one's telling them. No one's telling them. Not their attorney, not their CPA, because everyone's CYA. No one wants to suggest something where if something goes wrong, it'll come back, on there. And so it's not taught, just like a lot of important things are not taught to us in our lives, the current system. So, so I started that, and I started a blog, and I wrote a book, and I was doing some with the company I was working with. I started doing some hard money loans and just getting my feet wet with paper.
Mhm.
But my passion was always the secondary market for notes. So, um, and then I just started getting people who's like, no, they don't want to sell for cash. They would rather get a, they get more, they get more money, and they don't pay the government that money, when they close, and they get all this great income, hassle-free income for retirement. And that that just changed my life. I mean, yeah, and working for that company in the early days is how I got the note queen thing. It was a joke in the office because every time we were talking about a deal, I'd always bring up owner financing. So someone said, "Oh, here's the note queen. Gotta talk about that again." So I just took that as a joke and just said, "Heck, see what happens if I build a brand around that." Is just sort of funny in a way. Um,
That's amazing. Wow, I love that story. Um, I want to touch on, there's probably a lot of people in the audience who are already setting up deals um, in residential, maybe even commercial. And you touch on something which is very important, which is the benefits of the seller carrying a note.
Right.
Since you've done this a lot, I'm sure you very articulately can say what the benefits are. So for someone who's trying to put up a deal together, what are the benefits that someone could communicate to the owner so that they could get over that hunch and do an owner financing deal?
Okay, so I'm the buyer and I'm talking to a seller trying to get them to carry the paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a good example. One of my other great investments was a little duplex over here that we're running 2 sides as Airbnb right now. It's total cash cow for us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the only reason I really wanted to get that property is because my mother, before she died, wanted to own a duplex. It was just one of her things. And so I was marketing for duplexes. And this guy called and I didn't really answer. And then he called again. And by the third time he called, I go, wow, this guy really wants to sell. I was just so distracted at the time that I was really bad at follow-up.
Yeah.
So finally he goes, don't you want to buy my property? I said, yeah, I want to buy your property. And so we came to a price. Well, he wanted more than I wanted to pay. But I said, look, if I pay your price, can you carry the paper? Would you carry for us? If I don't want to put out that much cash all up front. And he goes, I know how it works because someone did that for me a few years ago, one of my first properties, but I really rather not. And I said, Ron, what's the best? Let me ask you this. You just want to ride your motorcycle and not think about your investments. What's the best investment that you have right now, the passive investment? He goes, well, an annuity. And I go, well, how much is it paying you? And he said 4%. And I said, well, if I can pay you 4% on your money, and that's matching the best investment you have in your portfolio, would you be willing to be the bank for me? Let me pay you over time. I can pay you more if you let me pay over time. And he goes, okay. So he wanted a big fat down payment. We paid probably 35 to 40% down.
Mm-hmm.
But he carried the rest at 4%, which was still as good or better than what the banks were doing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
No 1003, no credit score, nothing like this, right? And so I just put it to him that way. Well, what do you really need? A lot of people don't need cash. What are they going to do? They take the big capital gains hit a lot of times. Then what are they going to do with some money? Where are they going to put it safely that's making more than 4, 5, 6, 7%? Hardly anywhere. Anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So there they go. So if they leave their money at work in the property, then they don't lose it to taxes and they can make 4, 5, 6, 7% on their money secured by a property that they already know. So people in the know, you don't have to talk them into it. They have that already in their mind as their retirement plan. They're going to paper out of their rental holdings. So, but you never know who's going to carry because they don't advertise. Most of the time, they don't advertise. The only way you know is if you present them an offer. If I can give you whatever it is, 5% down, 10% down, 15, 20, will you be the bank for me? Let me pay you over time. And then I usually put together an amortization schedule for them. There's a really wonderful program that I use, a couple that I just rely on constantly. And then at the end, they can see that, holy crap, over the term of the note, I'm going to make 3 times. I'm going to make 3 times my money. If I would have just put it in a money market fund or a CD or whatever, they can see that they're going to make a lot more. But people that should carry won't always do it, but you should be good at asking for it. If you're be good at asking for it, and then make sure you have a first right of refusal to buy that note so that you can get sold out from under you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the chance to benefit first.
Yeah. And why is it that when someone's carrying a note, they don't have to pay taxes?
Because capital gains, how that works. So you have to pay a percentage. There's whatever that ratio program is. So the money you get now gets taxed fully. That's IRC 451, where the installment sale provision in the IRS code allows you to defer capital gains. So you're only going to get, instead of, let's say the property's worth 400,000. If you get 400,000 right now, you can probably write away 25% of that to the government, right? 2,000, 100,000, bye-bye. If you carry the paper on it, you don't get taxed on that capital gains until in the year you receive it, right? So you're receiving interest and principal, interest and principal, interest and principal. So every year you only pay capital gains on that principal that you've received in that year. So that all that money that you would have written away to the tax man is still earning you interest at work against that property. So it's a fantastic retirement strategy and tax strategy. Of course, this comes with a disclaimer: everyone's situation is different. Confer with your own tax advisor. So,
Love it.
yeah, but it's so powerful. It's one of the best tools and little known tools, because who gets paid to educate you? That no one gets paid to educate you on this.
Yeah.
Just like you don't get paid to learn how to be really healthy or know how to manage finances. No one pays you for that because they prefer you're a widget in the system and don't know these things.
We're how to have a good relationship. Yeah. So I want to touch on a little bit about what would make a note very bad.
Very bad. No down payment, 0% interest, 560 credit score on an old mobile home in a park. That's the worst note you can get.
Okay, and tell us why. Why is it that if the down payment was 0, why is that bad?
Because if that person runs in to financial trouble, what do they have to lose? They don't even have a security deposit to worry about it. So if they get into trouble, it's no sweat off their back to walk away. You want there to be pain. You want the person, the borrower, unless you bought the note to own the property, hoping you would own the property. Now that's a strategy. That's the non-performing note side of things. But normally you just want to get paid. I don't want the job of foreclosing on a bunch of people. I buy performing paper, and when I sell my product that I have, either mobile homes or real estate, when I paper out of it, when I offer seller financing to have that note income, I don't want to take it back. I don't want it. I want it just dropping in just the way I want. Okay. So, by the time someone puts 10 or 20% down, it's going to take a lot of pain before they're willing to walk away. So that's called hard equity. And there's nothing that can replace hard equity in terms of protecting the value of your note, because if they don't pay, then the last line of defense to pay your note is the collateral. And so you better hope that it's worth quite a bit more than the note balance that you're owed. Otherwise you can lose money.
Gotcha. And why 0%? Why is it good to have interest on the note when you're making the note?
Okay, there's more than one answer, but the biggest one is this. Now remember, in our one example where I said it was a 7%, remember I said let's pretend this is a really good note. Remember, it was 7% here. Now this is 0% down here. So, and then this is 8%. Remember? So it was a tiny move. The face rate on the note was 7%, and it was only a tiny move up to 8%. So that means a tiny discount, maybe a 5 to 10% discount on the note. Okay?
Yeah.
But if the face rate is not at 7, it's down here at 0, can you see that's a much bigger discount? Because I don't care that they were happy with 0%. I'm not going to buy a note at 0%. I can get 0% putting it in the bank. Or the stock somewhere, right? I have other brain damage ways to make 0%. So that makes for a big discount, because the investor's gonna want this yield, and the face rate on the note, that means that's a long way between, and that means for a big discount versus If it was at 7%, it's a little discount on the note. I've bought lots of 0% paper. Not lots, I would say, I don't know, a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
Happens, but then that's great, because then it doesn't matter that it's 0% because I bought it at such a discount that I'm making my yield that I want. And if it pays off early, voila, you really scored.
Gotcha.
The shit shoots the yields through the roof. So
Yeah. So even when you're buying a note that's 0%, you want to get like the UPW at like 60, right? Or like lower, so that
yeah. So instead of, if it was at 7%, I might be able to pay, let's say 85 cents for that note. If it's at 0%, maybe I'm paying 45%. So that's less than 50 cents on the dollar. UPB, unpaid principal balance, UPB.
Yeah. And then you also want to make sure that the value of what's being collateralized is higher, right? Otherwise, you're getting into a money pit.
Well, so one of the first things is you have to know what's the value of the collateral that's securing the note. That's why you have to know something about the real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
Would I buy this? What property? What price would I pay for that property? What is it worth, to know what you'd pay for the note secured by that property? That's a very important factor. And a lot of times note buyers will say, no matter what the note looks like, I will not buy more than 70% of appraised value, right? Something like that, 65%, 80%. They have a thing where, what's the value worth? And no matter how the calculator goes, I'm never paying more than this percentage of value against that collateral, of that underlying collateral. Yeah. So just like a private money lender, right? Used to be they would only go up to 65%. I think a lot of people are more aggressive these days, but it doesn't matter. They don't care anything. They're only going up to 65 cents against the ARV of that property. Mm-hmm. Right? So very important. When you buy a note, you better know that you're happy owning that property. You gotta think, because it happens, even if you set everything up perfect, life happens. And you have to deal with a non-performing situation, several times in your career, in your portfolio.
Yeah. And what about the credit score that makes it bad, having a 560 credit score?
Well, why don't they get offers for credit cards?
Well, because they're not good at handling their credit.
Yeah, they're not good at managing money. And so that means someone with a bad credit score like that, it may be performing. They may be paying right now. They might have paid for the last 4 years. But with that credit score, I buy it like it's a non-performing note. Mm-hmm. Just hasn't happened yet. So that's going to be 50 cents on the dollar or far less.
Yeah. That lets you know that the person's not that disciplined in paying off their debts.
No. Yeah, exactly. Now, there's always, things like they went through a divorce, medical issues. There's qualifying things that are different. But someone who has a long pattern of a bad credit score, in fact, a lot of the large funds won't even buy anything where the credit score is like less than 620. And that fluctuates a little bit, depending on the season, the market, but
got it.
It's not worth it. Yeah. Because if you get a great price, you're going to have a headache, because now you're going to foreclose, you're going to have legal fees, you're going to have to keep the taxes and insurance up while you're foreclosing. Will it take 6 months or 3 years, depending on the state, depending on the administration, and if they're trying to destroy personal property rights or not? Like there was a big moratorium on foreclosures for a long time. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could foreclose on someone, and they just get to sit there, don't pay rent, don't pay mortgage, just live in the house. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, and then they're going to destroy it on the way out. There's a good chance of that. So then you're going to have a long distance rehab, and then that is a nightmare, finding a contractor long distance you can trust. So, but at the end of the day, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. If things go to the worst, then you're dealing with a lot of time and effort that you didn't account to, or if you did account to, then it's a good deal.
Yeah. So you got to be happy if you take the property back. And if you don't want the property, don't buy them out.
Yeah. And touching on the last point, why a mobile home in a park somewhere? Why is that? I guess that's talking about location, right?
Right. Well, think about this. Even if it's the first position note on the chattel, it's not real estate. It's
Yeah.
chattel. It's personal property.
Yeah.
You're in second lien position behind space rent.
Yeah.
So even if you get you foreclose and you get the property, you still have space rent to keep covering. And I'll tell you what, that's not cheap these days. You might be paying $1,000 a month space rent, and if the park manager decides she would like to have that property, somehow it'll just never get sold. No one will get approved for that. Ask me how I know. This has been a painful experience. I lost money in a couple of these situations where the park wants to starve you out because they want the collateral for themselves.
That's bloody.
Very bloody. Yes. So that's what I call my most effective seminars on mobile homes. Notes on mobile homes in parks that you don't own. If you own the park, that's wonderful. But if you don't, you are at the mercy of that owner and that manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to keep space rent current. Otherwise, they'll lean you out and you'll lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is some ways that someone could learn how to underwrite to buy a note?
Well, you got to learn about the business, and we'll circle back to the things I said before. If you got more time than money, there's a lot of free content. I've got a lot of free content over the years. I've been creating content for, my goodness, at least 12 years. And then there's a lot of other stuff out there. Paper Source Online I have a links to resources on my website, and if people go and find that links to resources, like, how do I find notes to buy? Who should I connect with in the note business? How do I go about it? I have a lot of tidy information there already. So that's over at notequeen.com.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
so, tell us about a case study. What are your case studies from your mentoring students, your coaching?
Well, I wouldn't call it's not coaching in the same way that you're going to see it with a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
I really frame mine more as a consulting. A lot of times I'm just hired one-off for, helping. Someone's got a deal right in front of them, whether they're trying to buy something, trying to sell something. They'll just hire me one-on-one just to problem solve that one deal. Now, if someone wants to have more time, and I haven't created a coaching course, so to speak, like that, that's in the works in the not too distant future, but people can buy a package of time where I'll just say, because everyone starts at different places. Some people don't even know the first thing about even the glossary terms that we've been discussing, that we've been throwing back and forth. They're like, what? Right. So, and then other
Go look those up.
yeah, other people are, they're only this far away from they're only lacking a little bit in understanding. And so they can buy a package of time where I just customize whatever that person needs. And then I've got a new book coming out this year that's updated the one, my seller financing on steroids, that I wrote near the beginning. I'm going to update that with a lot more stories. But you wanted a case study. My gosh, one of my consulting clients, this was great. He was trying to buy a fiveplex. Okay. Yeah. And so I helped him negotiate, coached him to negotiate with the seller. He ended up he paid $100,000 over market, but he cash flowed from day one with 5% down. And he got 50-year financing, because guess what? You don't get what you don't ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of deals, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but people need to understand that when a deal is getting ready, when you're going to throw away a lead, when a deal's falling apart, You got to have more tools to go at it with. Try the financing deal. And a lot of times let's say a buyer has a great down payment, the seller still doesn't want to carry paper. So I help set up that situation where the note gets created and then I buy it at closing. So the seller still gets their cash, but I've reverse engineered the note so that I know what I can buy it at ahead of time. And a lot of times the big, long 12 months, 24 months of seasoning isn't required. So that's how I can help get the seller as much or more than they're expecting, just through the back door. Instead of the front door, we just go around the back door. But yes, it's amazingly powerful. I would say one to two times out of 10, a deal that's getting ready to fall apart, I can help keep it together, and I can help people understand how to keep something together. Unless you've been in the business, I've been running around these circles since early 2000s, so gosh, well over 20 years. I'm much older than you, Julian. I hate to break it to you.
I'm sorry to hear the.
You be my son, but yeah, it's that's the passion that I have is helping people understand what I call this dance between property and paper. Because when you understand the discounted market for notes, it makes you a killer real estate investor.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I want to tell you, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Well, my site's been around for a long time, probably looks that way too. But over at notequeen.com. And that's my main place where all my stuff is hosted and things like that. So far, I'm not really active on social media, but I do have a Facebook page that I plan to somewhat resurrect in the near future. It's like, what's it called? Note Queen, owner financing strategies, something like that.
That's cool.
And then I have a podcast that I did several years worth of called, it's on iTunes, I think, owner financing and notes. So yeah, but all those links can be found in the links to resources on my website, notequeen.com.
That's amazing. Great, Dawn. I feel like we just touched the surface of notes.
Yeah. I hope what we did do is just tantalize people to want to know just a little bit more, because it's so powerful. And you look at a financial calculator and you can get all wigged out. Mm-hmm. All you got to know is, basically, I tell people when I was doing the speaking circuits, for many years, if you can learn to push the first 5 buttons, the main 5 buttons, you can put together. That's all I've ever known how to do. And I've put together a portfolio of notes, properties, sold properties, all these things. And it's really fun. It's really empowering, and I enjoy it greatly.
That's amazing, Dawn. Thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in the near future, maybe we can do a part 2. Dive in a little bit.
Yeah, it would be fun to take, people through. Of course, that the course that I'm putting together is going to go a little more in depth on take one deal and show how those numbers actually work. And then after you go through that, maybe you'll go, okay, maybe you'll want to take it at a different level and say, now where do we go with this? Have questions. So
yeah, that's amazing, and it's exciting. So love it. So Dawn, thank you so much, and wish you a great week, and we'll talk again very soon. Okay.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.